The horror genre is big on ghosts and scares, and the Fatal Frame series, or Project Zero in Europe, does just that. The Switch got access to Fatal Frame 5, or Maiden of Black Water, about a year ago, bringing some pretty nice ghost hunting and a creepy atmosphere to the handheld. This year we've got a remaster of Fatal Frame 4, something that's never gotten an official English release until now. Here is my review of Fatal Frame Mask of the Lunar Eclipse for the Nintendo Switch. This game takes place at a sanatorium on the island Rogetsu in Japan, known for its mask and dance rituals to commune with the dead. The story revolves around two girls, Ruka and Misaki, whom were 2 of 5 rescued from that island when everybody else had mysteriously died. They were just standing in an underground cave with no memories. When 2 of the 5 end up dead years later, Misaki heads back to the ghostly island in search of answers to the past, followed soon after by Ruka. Now, I find this story and setting to be very good, but in different ways. The atmosphere and setting of a horror game on a Japanese island and in a sanatorium is great. Hospitals have always been good locales for horror, and this game does it well with a collection of creepy places and apparitions of doctors and nurses. The only thing about this story that I find a bit odd is Misaki. Her and Ruka's stories are told separately and connect later, but I feel like Misaki having the secondary protagonist role is a little weird, considering things you find out later on in the game. I do understand why Ruka is the main protagonist, but a lot of things make it feel like Misaki should have had a larger role. When it comes to gameplay, this is a 3D survival horror game with photography elements and combat. Like with Fatal Frame 5, you will navigate 3D areas, investigate items, and solve puzzles, as well as doing combat with a bunch of hostile ghosts. Now, as far as this being a remaster, the main difference between this version and the original Japan only on the Wii is the inclusion of new costumes and a few quality of life things here and there, like photo mode and a button UI for the piano puzzle to make it a bit easier. But let's get on to main progression. This game goes in chapters, and fans of the franchise will be very familiar with the setup. Every chapter is centered around one of 3 characters, and you will slowly explore the sanatorium with them as their story goes forward. You do this in typical survival horror fashion, and doors being locked, and you guided around and push towards key items to get you where you need to go. As you'd expect, there's a good bit of puzzle solving here. Not just in figuring out where to go, but finding items needed to get to your objective and solving actual puzzles from time to time. Though being Fatal Frame, the whole of the game is centered on the camera obscura, the special camera that can interact with the spirit world and do damage to the many hostile entities that will attack you. As you explore the game, you'll find several ghosts, some of which are just shadows of memories, like a nurse at her station or a patient making their rounds through the halls. Each of these apparitions are a sort of collectible. You have a bit of an album, and whenever they appear, you have a short amount of time to get out your camera and take a snapshot to add them and get special points that can later be used to trade for items. And then there's fighting. You actually don't do this that much compared to exploration, but a lot of the ghosts are hostile towards you and you have to fight them off with the camera obscura. This is fairly straightforward. You have a camera mode where you can move around a reticle and have to essentially lock onto the ghost and take a picture of them to do damage and ward them off. Though it's not that simple. In 5, you could look at a ghost with the camera and pretty much immediately lock on and take a picture within a couple seconds. In this game, you actually have to wait for the camera to slowly charge and lock onto the ghost before you can take that picture. You have to do a lot more strategy in placement to make sure they can't get to you before you get that shot off. And like 5, you have different types of film you can collect that do more damage, and various upgrade lenses that can do special effects, like slowing enemies down. I find this mechanic to be pretty fun, but it's very slow and sluggish like many parts of this game. While you can upgrade the cameras to do things faster and better, letting the camera charge up and lock onto a ghost takes a long time, and you'll often have to position yourself as far away as possible to let the slow charging happen and not waste ammo. While we're on the topic, let's go into that slow and sluggish nature. Everything about this game is slow. Walking speed, opening doors takes a long time to build suspense, and even the running speed is incredibly slow, if you can even call it running. This was likely done on purpose to build tension and make the characters seem weak compared to the ghosts, but in no horror scenario should you ever be in the middle of a ghost chase and run like you're wearing high heels when you're clearly not. I actually had to go back to Maiden of Black Water to see if the whole series had this slow running pace, and as you can see here, it doesn't. It's nice to be able to slow down and enjoy the atmosphere of the game as you walk, but combat should have a much faster running speed than just slightly faster walking. The game is a bit clunky as well. It isn't quite tank control level, but the camera gets caught on a lot and you can easily get stuck against an object while just trying to walk around. The movement issues also don't help in a few of the more needlessly difficult boss fights that take place in very cramped areas, turning a doable fight into an extremely frustrating one as you try to strafe and get caught on something nearby, letting the ghost come right up to you. Though combining all of this with the long camera charge time definitely shows just how much of an improvement 5 was over this game. But let's get away from the bad and talk about the good. Scare factor. Maiden of Black Water did a nice job at building atmosphere, but didn't do much for jump scares. This game does. From the very start of the prologue, it was obvious that this game was going to have jump scare after jump scare, and they're all pretty good. Even when I'd been playing the game for hours and gotten used to how the game flow goes, a lot of the jump scares still managed to get me. Now, I will admit the scenery and all the cinematics of the spirits were crazy and creepy in 5, but this game definitely hits it a lot better with the haunted hospital and constant jump scares. And that brings us to content and length. You'll be spending quite a bit of time here. Now, if you look online, you'll see lots of people on websites claiming this is a 10 to 12 hour game, and technically it is. But the play timer in game is only for actual gameplay, not menus, upgrading, looking at the maps, cutscenes, or anything else. I hit 10 hours when I was around chapter 7 of 12, at which point the game told me I'd only been playing for 7 hours. Realistically, it'll probably be about 15 hours by the time you get to the end. Now the presentation, the game looks great just like 5. There's a ton of detail in everything. The physics are really impressive with everything on your character moving as you walk, from hair to little pieces of fabric on clothing. And none of this detail is lost in handheld mode. It looks just as good when played on the go. Then we get to performance, which is mostly good. It remains stable for about 90-95% of the game, only dropping a little bit when running up and down stairs. Thankfully, it's not going to cause you an issue in combat or chase sequences. I don't have anything else to say about performance, so let's go into battery life. The original and light models will get about 2 to 4 hours out of Fatal Frame 4, while the V2 and OLED get 5 to 6 hours. In conclusion, Fatal Frame 4 has finally come west both for home consoles and 2 handhelds, bringing us a creepy adventure set in a haunted sanatorium with lots of ghosts to take pictures of and ward off. Now, the downside, the game is painfully sluggish on movement, camera, and many other things, showing off just how big of an improvement Maiden of Black Water was. But if you're okay taking things slow, the story and atmosphere are great, and the jump scares will keep you on your toes for much of this scary experience. Reviews to Go rates Fatal Frame Mask of the Lunar Eclipse for the Nintendo Switch a 7 out of 10. If you have any comments or questions, feel free to leave them below. Thank you for watching, and have a great day.